The Consumption and Likability of Fruits and Vegetables Among College Students by Kentaria Henley. So a little bit of background. Poor diet quality is the leading risk factor associated with death in the United States. Therefore, eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help protect against many chronic diseases, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, as well as obesity. Fruits and vegetables also provide important vitamins and minerals that help the body work properly, as well as fight off illness and disease. The World Health Organization suggests consuming at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day to help improve overall health and reduce the risk of chronic diseases, yet many Americans fail to meet the recommended guidelines. About 22% of U.S. adults eat the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables, while less than 15% of youth consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables. This graph shows the consumption of fruit that's consumed less than 1 time per day by state for the ages of 18 through 24. And the percent prevalence by state ranges from about 30% to 60%. There are some states that has 39% to 56%, whereas Mississippi falls into that category. This graph also shows the consumption of vegetables that's consumed less than 1 time a day by state. The percent prevalence ranges from 12% to about 50%, whereas in Mississippi, the prevalence ranges from about 20% to about 50% of the population consume vegetables less than 1 time per day. So among college students, the American College Health Association reports nearly 5% of students have a chronic illness, nearly 40% of college students are overweight or obese, and less than 5% of college students consume the recommended fruits and vegetables. Although there is some data on health behaviors among college students, there is a lack of research on the consumption and liking of fruits and vegetables. There are 3 objectives of the study. The primary objective of this study was to examine fruits and vegetables intake among college students. The secondary objectives aim to identify the liking of fruits and vegetables and determine if there is a relationship between skin carotenoid and the liking of fruits and vegetables. The study design was a cross-sectional study using secondary data from the Mississippi State database. There was a Vegemeter used, which was an indicator of fruits and vegetable intake. A quadric survey was used to determine the liking and dislikes of fruits and vegetables. To determine the liking and dislike of fruits and vegetables, a general labeled magnitude scale that ranged from -100 to 100 was used. A 9-point Likert scale was also used to determine the category in which fruits and vegetables were liked or disliked. For the statistical analysis, SPSS was used to carry out independent t-tests, one-way ANOVA, and Pearson correlation. This table shows the demographic characteristics of students. About 73% of college students were between the ages of 18 and 20. About 27% was between the ages of 21 through 25. There were a high percentage of females in the study. About 86% were females, and about 14% of the students were male. 30% of the students were sophomores, 29% were juniors, 18% of students were seniors, and about 23% were freshmen. Majority of the students were normal weight, 62% were normal weight, 26% of the students were overweight, 11% of the students were obese, and only 1% of the population was underweight. The BMI, the mean BMI was about 24, and the mean age was about 20. So I have 2 tables that describe mean carotenoid levels among the college students. The first table shows mean carotenoid level in the percentage of students that fill in each range. 80% of students had a mean skin carotenoid of 200 through 399. There were 12% of students with a skin carotenoid less than 200. 8% of students had a mean skin carotenoid of 400 through 500, and there are no students with a mean skin carotenoid greater than 500. Overall, the mean skin carotenoid was 273, and based on BMI and gender, it varied just a little bit, but it still was less than 300 and in the 200s. So this graph shows the mean skin carotenoid by age group, and there was significant differences detected. Student ages 21 through 25 had a mean skin carotenoid of 310, while student ages 18 and 20 had a mean skin carotenoid of 258. So the highest age group, or the older students, had a higher mean skin carotenoid that was significantly different than the younger age group. This graph shows the mean skin carotenoids by year of study, and there were significant differences detected between second and fourth year college students. Overall, the first year college students had a 275 mean skin carotenoid score. Second year college students had a 240 score. Third year college students had a score of 272, while fourth year college students had a score of 328. This is mean skin carotenoid by BMI, and there are no significant differences detected between the different categories of BMI. Underweight students had a mean skin carotenoid of 173. Normal weight, the skin carotenoid was 288. Overweight, the skin carotenoid was 244. And obese, the skin carotenoid was 243. This graph also shows mean skin carotenoid by gender, and there are also no significant difference detected here. Male had a slight higher skin carotenoid level, which was 281 compared to 272 of females. So this table shows the mean lichen of fruits and vegetables. The first column lists the fruit and vegetables that were included in the study. The second column identified the mean intensity of the like and dislike of fruits and vegetables. And the third column categorizes the liking of fruits and vegetables. Pineapple was the most liked fruit with a mean score of 57, and it was categorized as a very strong liking. Potatoes was the most liked vegetables with a mean score of 63 and also a very strong liking. There were also some strong liking for green leafy vegetables, corn, broccoli, bananas, as well as watermelon, and a moderate liking for carrots, avocado, and blueberries. There were some weak lichens, and those were for tomatoes and cabbage. So this graph shows the liking of fruits and vegetables by year of study. And the shaded area shows that there is a significant difference in the liking of cabbage between first year college students as well as third year college students. Of the other fruits and vegetables, there were no significant difference, only among the cabbages. This graph shows the mean liking of fruits and vegetables by gender. There are no shaded in bars, so there were no significant differences detected among gender. This graph shows the mean liking of fruits and vegetables by age group, and there were some significant differences detected within the carrots. Students ages 21 through 24 had a greater liking for carrots than student ages 18 through 20. And this graph also shows the liking of fruit and vegetables by BMI, and there were some significant differences detected. However, there was only one student in the underweight category, so the post hoc test couldn't tell where the differences lie. But there were some statistical differences in the liking of the green leafy vegetables, which is spinach, celery, and greens, tomatoes, bananas, blueberries, and pineapples. This graph shows the correlation between the mean intake and the mean liking of fruits and vegetables. And there was a weak positive correlation. So as the liking of fruits and vegetables increased, so did the Veg-O-Meter scores, or the intake of fruit and vegetables. So in conclusion, the liking of fruits and vegetables are influenced by many factors, including age, gender, and year of study. Identifying fruits and vegetables preferred at specific stages throughout the college experience is very important. Not only that, but the ability to access preferred fruits and vegetables on and off campus is critical in encouraging fruits and vegetable consumption amongst college students. Thank you.
Hello, I am Pratana Tapani. Today I am going to present my research proposal. The title is Exploring the Relationship Between Genetic Variation in Taste Receptor Genes and Sound Taste Perception Among People with Hypertension. These are the outlines that I'm going to present. It includes introduction, objective, methodology, expected outcomes, and potential impact. Untreated hypertension leads to many degenerative diseases such as stroke and cardiovascular disease, which are the leading cause of death in United States. Risk factors of hypertension can be categorized into two groups, which are non-modifiable factors and modifiable factors, and high sodium food consumption is one of the modifiable factors. From the previous studies, they are shown that sodium plays an important role in the prevention and intervention. Elmer and team conducted the primary prevention of hypertension program and the hypertension prevention trial. The results show that patients who were randomly assigned to the reduced sodium consumption 8.8% became hypertensive during the 5 years follow-up period, compared with 19.2% in the control group. Another study of Cook and team found that there was a 25% reduction in the risk of cardiovascular diseases was seen in the intervention group compared to the control group. However, the average American eats more than 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day, and only around 10% of adults maintain their sodium intake at the recommendation level of 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day. Then, if they can limit the amount of sodium intake, it would help their blood pressure status. So, what factors that can contribute to sodium consumption? From previous studies, sound taste perception or sound sensitivity impacts food preference and sodium consumption. There was a study in Brazil. The study was conducted with 54 hypertensive and 54 normotensive subjects to investigate the gustatory threshold for salt and its relationship with dietary salt intake. They measured 24-hour urinary sodium excretion, discretionary salt, sodium food frequency questionnaire, 24-hour recall, detection and recognition thresholds. They found that detection and recognition thresholds were positively related to total salt intake in both groups. Detection and recognition thresholds were higher among hypertensive subjects too. Then, the taste perception may play a key role in sodium intake and may affect blood pressure status. However, there was a study in Korea that showed the opposite result. They found the detection and recognition thresholds of the salt test did not significantly differ between the control and hypersensitive groups, and they also found there was no correlation between the salt test threshold and 24-hour urinary sodium excretion. So it has not been confirmed that the taste threshold is different between hypertension and normal subjects. Another factor that may affect on salt consumption is genetics. Genetic variation across the human genome has been recognized as increasingly complex. Single nucleotide polymorphisms or SNPs are the most common type of genetic variations. Genetic polymorphisms are normally found at least 1% of the population, although common polymorphism can occur in up to 40 to 50% of the population. There was a study of genetic variation and salt threshold. The study was conducted in Canada. 95 subjects were performed test thresholds and provided the blood sample. The results showed that variation in the TRPV1 and the SCNN1B genes may modify salt taste perception in humans. Then these two genes has been identified as salt taste receptors with different genetic variations that affect taste sensitivity. However, the study that I have reviewed, there are still controversy about the association between salt taste threshold and hypertension status. Then it would be better if there is a study that investigates single polymorphism of taste genes and salt taste perception in order to determine whether single nucleotide polymorphism in the salt taste receptor genes affects salt taste perception in hypertension patients. The objectives of my study include the first one, to determine whether SNPs in the taste receptor genes affects the perception of saltiness. Second one, to investigate the allele frequencies of SNP of taste receptor genes in hypertensive and normotensive subjects. The third one, to determine differences of salt sensitivity threshold between hypertensive and normotensive subjects. I chose these four SNPs from two genes regarding the previous studies. Next is the methodology. This study is a cross-sectional design. Participants will be divided into two groups, including normotensive and hypertensive groups. Each group will be asked to complete the questionnaire and provide saliva samples and perform salt taste threshold test. For the sample size, each group will have 125 subjects. Subjects will be normotensive volunteers and patients with hypertension in Mississippi State. To recruit all the participants, posters and emails will announce the information about the research project at community events in Mississippi. Inclusion criteria for the hypertensive group includes age above 20 years old, patient with a clinical diagnosis of primary hypertension, taking hypertensive medication, willing to complete the informed consent process, and agree to provide a saliva sample. Exclusion criteria for both groups include having an alteration in taste, experiencing dry mouth, regularly taking medication affect taste or saliva production, and pregnancy or breastfeeding women. Total time for collect the data for each subject is about 20 minutes. 3 minutes for recording, 5 minutes for completing the questionnaire, and 5 minutes for weight and blood pressure measurements, and 7 minutes for collecting saliva, and 7 minutes for performing taste threshold test. Blood pressure will be measured after consent form signing by using an automatic monitor with all participants in the sitting position. Weight will be measured using a Tanita weight scale. For the questionnaire, it consists of 3 parts. The first part is about personal information, includes age, gender, income, education level, and occupation. The second part is about health information, includes chronic health conditions, nutritional behavior, and physical activity. The third part is about food acceptability information. Participants will rate each of the food and beverage items in terms of how instantly he or she likes or dislikes them. Next is saliva collection. Participants will provide 2 milliliters of saliva using the passive dew collection method with saliva collection aids from Salimetrics. And then salt taste perception will be determined by using a modified Harris-Kelmas procedure. The lowest concentration that subjects can recognize of the salty taste in the salt solution series will be determined as the recognition threshold. Then subject will receive one sample at the concentration which they recognize with 2 blanks. Subject will be asked to sort the cups into taste and water. If subject cannot sort correctly, the sorting task will be repeated at the next higher concentration. For the genetic part, saliva sample will be brought on the filter paper and then cut into small pieces and put in the tube and then extract DNA by using TACMAN sample to snipped. For the genetic part, saliva samples will be brought on the filter papers and then cut it into the small pieces and put it in the tube, then extract DNA by using TACMAN sample to snipped. Lastly, to determine genetic variations, for SNP will be analyzed by using TACMAN allelic discrimination assays and the Quantstrio 5 real-time PCR system. Expected outcomes of this study include: the first one is people with mutated SNP of taste receptor genes will have a high linking for salty tasting foods. The second one, hypertensive population will differ in their variation in SNP's allele frequencies in comparison to the normotensive population. The third one, the salt taste recognition threshold of the hypertensive population will be higher than the normotensive population. After I finish the study, I hope that the finding will help prevention hypertension by identifying individuals at risk as well as providing targeted personalized education about individual risk factors and diet. These are the references that I use for my study. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Hello, my name is Megan O'Doherty.
And I'm Madison Welch, and we did a systematic review on the relationship between breastfeeding and asthma in school-age children.
Our research question was, does exclusive breastfeeding for at least 6 months decrease the development of asthma in school-age children?
We had 3 objectives. The first one was to identify the factors that are associated with a decreased risk of asthma in children who were breastfed exclusively for at least 6 months. Our second objective was to compare the number of children with asthma who were breastfed exclusively for at least 6 months to those who were not breastfed. And our third was to analyze the correlation between children who were not breastfed and the incidence of asthma.
We are going to go through our introduction, then talk about our methodology, then our results and discussion, and then finally our conclusion.
So, asthma and asthma-related symptoms are common in children and often continue later in life. Research has shown various benefits of breastfeeding on the health of baby and the mother, but research is still undecided regarding breastfeeding reducing risk of asthma in school-age children.
For our methodology, we conducted a systematic review following the PRISMA guidelines, and we did this from finding studies published on the topic of breastfeeding and asthma in school-age children. We searched the PubMed database using keywords such as breastfeeding, breastfed, breastfeeding exclusively, asthma, asthma risk, and asthma in school-age children. We included studies that were listed from January 2012 to November 2017. We also included population-based prospective cohort studies, case control studies, cross-sectional studies, and original studies.
So our search yields 1,117 titles, and after going through the exclusion process, we included 5 studies that fit our inclusion criteria. And our inclusion criteria consisted of population-based prospective cohort studies, case control study, a cross-sectional study, an original study, and studies of children with asthma that had been breastfed or that had no history of being breastfed.
The articles we analyzed, for each study, we looked at the length of exclusive breastfeeding according to months and also non-exclusive breastfeeding. We recorded the ages of children in each study based on when the studies occurred and the time period that breastfeeding was used for the child. The outcomes were recorded using each study's source of information, and these included breastfeeding exposure and asthma-related symptoms based on questionnaires, multiple questionnaires from birth to 1 year of age, reports from lung function at 10 years of age from a spirometry, parental reports of physician-diagnosed asthma and wheezing, and also parental recall of breastfeeding and reports from pediatric patients.
So our information included, it was any breastfeeding, breastfeeding duration, exclusive breastfeeding, and no breastfeeding. And from our studies, they were the most commonly used factors when looking at breastfeeding and asthma. We investigated odds ratios for each study and reported those that were available. Age groups included 0 to 1 years, 1 to 5 years, 6 to 14 years of age. And we categorized all of the age ranges to be considered as school-age children, a requirement for eligibility for our systematic review.
For our results, we compared other reports similar to this topic and included studies that had different methods and statistics regarding breastfeeding and asthma. And due to this inclusion of different types of studies, an increase in variability occurred. The differences between the study outcomes may attribute to length of breastfeeding recall. We used our criteria and search selection to ensure the quality of our studies and information, and we addressed the variability in our studies in using the bias ranking and quality score. And we found that more versus less breastfeeding duration was shown to be effective in reducing asthma in school-age children.
So our systematic review found a positive relationship between asthma reduction and breastfeeding for at least 6 months in school-age children. Exclusive breastfeeding for at least 6 months resulted in less asthma incidents in school-age children versus those who were not exclusively breastfed for at least 6 months.
So our results from our studies concluded that asthma risk and incidence was lower in school-age children that were breastfed longer, especially at least 6 months. The exclusive breastfeeding was found to be more effective in asthma prevention in children than the non-exclusive breastfeeding. And we found benefits to children are seen earlier in the child's life, and breastfeeding for more than 6 months has not shown greater benefits to asthma prevention.
So our limitations, there was self-reporting for 3 studies. A lot of the questionnaires that were given to the mothers, they were reporting all the information. There was selection bias, and then some participants were of a specific race and population. So breastfeeding and effects on asthma could differ in different cultures and economies. All but one of our studies were in the United States, so that could have an effect on our results in our study.
Our conclusion, our research findings showed that our systematic review focused on the relationship between any breastfeeding, breastfeeding duration, and breastfeeding exclusiveness. And we also looked at the reduction and prevention of asthma in school-age children. Breastfeeding has not shown to have more effects on asthma control or prevention in older children and in children breastfed for more than 6 months. And our systematic review strongly suggested that there is sufficient evidence that exclusively breastfeeding for at least 6 months showed to be the most effective in asthma prevention in the children ages 0 to 12.
For future research, researchers should analyze the duration of breastfeeding in children with genetic and environmental factors in consideration. Breastfeeding should be recorded specifically as exclusive or non-exclusive, and noting if formula was used. Outside exposures that the mother may have encountered should also be taken into consideration, such as tobacco smoke, because that could affect the child's risk for asthma and asthma symptoms. And then future studies should also include the benefits of breastfeeding and provide more information regarding asthma prevention.
And here are references.
My name is Chelsea Finch, and my partner's name is Quinn Kane, and we are dietetic interns at Mississippi State University. So our research looked into the difference in body composition and dietary intake in children with ADHD on medication versus children without ADHD. Research shows that ADHD is the result of an imbalance of chemicals in the brain. Dopamine is known as the feel-good neurotransmitter or the reward neurotransmitter, and it is responsible for movement, mood, motivation, and attention. Individuals with ADHD produce an excessively efficient dopamine removal system. This means the dopamine is removed too quickly and the brain is left unstimulated. Symptoms of ADHD include impulsiveness, disorganization and difficulty with prioritizing, poor time management skills, difficulty multitasking, restlessness, difficulty focusing on a task, low frustration tolerance, mood swings, and difficulty coping with stress. ADHD is treated with the stimulant medications amphetamines and methylphenidates. These medications block the transporters that remove dopamine. Researchers suspect stimulant medications manage ADHD symptoms because they allow dopamine to have more time to act in the brain cells. Side effects of ADHD medications include decreased appetite, weight loss, difficulty sleeping, heart palpitations, increased blood pressure, dizziness, and headaches. And our primary concern was the decreased appetite and weight loss. Our study objective is to investigate the dietary intake and body composition in children with ADHD. Our primary aim was to examine the differences in body composition between healthy kids with ADHD and a healthy control group. Our secondary aim is to examine the variances in dietary intake between kids with ADHD and a healthy control group in regards to macronutrient and micronutrient consumption. Literature reviews showed that there is a correlation between stimulant medications and early fat loss, slower lean tissue development, decreased weight gain, impaired height growth, and slower growth in early childhood when compared to a control group of healthy children. Children with ADHD exhibit an impulsive and irregular eating pattern with higher amounts of refined grains and sugary beverages, along with lower amounts of fruits and vegetables, as well as fish, dairy, calcium, and vitamin B2. So our study group consisted of children between the ages of 7 and 19 years old. The children with ADHD were referred from Regional Rehabilitation Center, and we plan to recruit 30 ADHD children and 30 healthy children. We are currently still recruiting participants and collecting data. So far, we have collected 15 healthy children and 14 children with ADHD. ADHD diagnoses meet the criteria established by the American Psychiatric Association. Available healthy children from age 7 to 19 years old were recruited as controls. So our procedure, we recruit participants. We have requested informed consent by parents and the children who completed the assessment. We collected demographic information, including gender, age, ethnicity, and race. We've collected anthropometric data on height, weight, and BMI. Dietary patterns and frequent eating habits were also assessed using a standardized and validated food frequency questionnaire. So our participants' height measurements were self-reported from the participants or their parents through an online questionnaire. And the weight was self-reported as well from the participants or their parents through the online questionnaire. And we calculated the BMI. We used a 2012 Youth Adolescent Food Frequency Questionnaire to collect the dietary intake data. This is an example of our food frequency questionnaire. We've asked questions about how frequently they're drinking sodas, their usual serving size, and other drinks like iced tea, fruit drinks, punch, lemonade, Kool-Aid, etc.
And for the result section, right now we have 30 participants. There is 16 of them are healthy children without ADHD, and there is 14 of them children with ADHD on medication. And most of them are male. There is about 1/3 of our participants are female. And the majority of our study participants are white. There is about 1/10 of them are from Asian population. And for the study result about our body composition, we found out compared with healthy children without ADHD and the children with ADHD on medication, the children with ADHD they tend to have lower BMI compared with the healthy control group, and they have about 20.4 BMI, and the healthy children have 23.3 BMI. And for the t-value and p-value, we say the t-value is a value to demonstrate the evidence of a significant difference between population means. And we say here for the BMI, the t-value is about 2, and the p-value is 0.07, so it's not significant. And for the study result about the eating behavior, we score the food frequency questionnaire. We give a score from 1 to 8 for the drinks, and give a score from 1 to 5 for the food, from never or less than 1 per month to greater than 4 serving per week for the food, and never or less than 1 per month score for 1 for the drink, and 3 or more bottles per day for a score of 8. And for the result, we found out the children with ADHD on medication group, they tend to drink more sugar drink. The sugar drink including the soda, the non-carbonated fruit drink like a fruit punch, fruit juice, sport drink, and also energy drink. And also we found out the children with ADHD on medication group, they tend to drink less water compared with children without ADHD. And for the t-value, we found out that the t-value is 1.7, and the p-value is also not significant. And for the bread, the children with ADHD on medication group, they tend to eat more white bread and eat less whole wheat or whole grain bread compared with children without ADHD. And you'll see the t-value here is not that significant, and also the p-value is 0.378, so it's also not significant. And we found out that there is, for the fruit, starchy vegetable, and the beans and the peas is almost the same for the children with ADHD on medication group and the healthy children group. But for the non-starchy vegetable, we found out the children with ADHD on medication group, they tend to eat less vegetable compared with the children without ADHD. And for the P, and here is the T value and P value, the P value is still not significant. And last but not least, for the fast food, salty snack, and sweet snack, we found out the children with ADHD on medication, they tend to eat more fast food, more salty snack, and also more sweet snack. Here is the fast food, including the French fries, mashed potato, hamburger, pizza, taco, burrito, chicken nugget, and hot dog. And for the salty snacks, including the potato chips, popcorn, pretzel, and the sweet snack, including fruit snack, sweet like cake, cookie, and pie, candy, and frozen treat like ice cream. And here is the T value, and the P value is also not significant. And for the discussion section, we found out, based on our current data, we found out children with ADHD on medication group, they have lower BMI compared with the control group. And the potential side effect of ADHD medication, including decreased appetite and weight loss, may contribute to the lower BMI in children with ADHD. And the current data also demonstrates the eating behavior difference between the children with ADHD on medication and the control group. For the ADHD group, they tend to drink more sugar beverage, drink less water, they eat less whole wheat bread, eat less non-starchy vegetable, and eat more fast food, salty snack, and sweet snacks. And a review of literature shows that children with ADHD on medication, they tend to have impulsive and irregular eating patterns. The erratic eating patterns include but are not limited to skipping meals, emotional overeating, impulsive eating, and lower self-control. That's explain why the children with ADHD, they tend to eat more convenient food. They like eat some fast food, salty snack, sweet snack. Also, they tend to drink more sugar beverage. So the children with ADHD may be risk group for the development of obesity in their adulthood. So attention should be directed towards these problematic behaviors. And though our study has some limitation, first, the time available to recruit, participate, and collect data was constrained due to the prolonged IRB evaluation period. And at the beginning, we want to manually collecting the height and weight by ourselves, but we end up collecting self-reported data because of the time limitation. And we also found out it's difficult to collect data as a result of COVID-19, and the participants were understandably preoccupied with the developing pandemic and all that in short. And here is our reference. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carly Terp, and I will be presenting my research on a systematic review of evidence-based child nutrition programs. Obesity is a major health concern in the United States. As of 2016, the adult rate was 39.6%. Back in 2000, the rate was 30.5%, which is a 10% increase. We can see that children are about 15 to 20% at different age groups. Some other health concerns that can result from obesity include heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and certain kinds of cancer. Some factors that are associated with obesity could be genetics or behavioral. Also, this would include dietary patterns, physical activity or lack of physical activity, and also medication use. Environment, education, and skills can contribute. And in children specifically, metabolism, community, neighborhood safety, short sleep periods, and negative childhood events can also contribute to obesity. Nutrition practices, specifically during the first 2 years of life, are important for adequate growth and development. Nutrition practices at an early age help create healthy dietary patterns. Changes in child's environment, such as in the home, the school, or different community settings, are resources for making changes in dietary behaviors and physical activity, mostly because this is where children spend primarily all of their time. 95% of children ages 5 to 17 are enrolled in school, for example. My research objectives include investigate the implementation of practice-based curriculum for child's nutrition program, evaluate the intervention strategies used in the child's nutrition program, and determine the effectiveness of intervention strategies in the child's nutrition program. In doing my literature review, I selected 4 different existing child nutrition programs that were implemented by different universities, and I used these to kind of compare what child nutrition programs already exist, what's going on with them, what they're doing, what intervention strategies they're using, are they effective, are there positive outcomes from them, and specifically the programs that I included in my literature review target either preschool age children or children that are in elementary schools, since this is the population that I wanted to look at with the research that I did. The first program that I looked at is the Food Friends Making New Food Fun for Kids, which was a program done by Colorado State University. This program was specifically for preschool age children. They used different hands-on activities such as storybook reading or food tastings, and they measured outcomes with pre-tests and post-tests. And then the Choose Healthy Food, Fun, and Fitness program was done by Cornell University. This program used 3rd to 6th grade students, so the population is a little bit older, but they included 6 lessons, which included nutrition activities, food tastings, physical activity games, and then they also included a family newsletter to get the parents involved. Also, similar to the last program, this program used a pre-test and post-test to measure outcomes. The third program I looked at is Food Hero, which was done by Oregon State University. This program is a little bit different because it was specifically based with social media. Everything that they did was kind of social media based. The goal was to increase fruit and vegetable consumption among Oregon SNAP participants. They did some school tasting assessments, but primarily what they did was include recipes online that participants could do at home, see at home, do with their kids at home. And then the fourth program that I looked at is Show Me Nutrition, which is a program done at the University of Missouri. They looked specifically at behavior change in regard to dietary habits. And they also wanted to look at multiple exposures of nutrition-related activities, as this is an important component to see long-term behavior changes. This population was kindergarten through 8th grade, so this age group is a little bit more expanded than some of the other ones, but you still are able to see the younger kids. And then with this program, they should ideally do it from kindergarten through 8th grade, so you can kind of track the progress that they make throughout. The nutrition education lessons go by grade, like I said, but they also contain tasting opportunities, which is a good experience. Now on to the research I did. I did an EBSCO discovery search for my systematic review. I used Academic Search Complete, ERIC, and Medline, And kind of the key phrases that I used were child nutrition programs and practice-based curriculum. I looked at peer-reviewed journals from a time frame of 2009 to 2018 because when I originally did my research, this was kind of the 10-year time frame. The inclusion criteria that I used were curricula implemented with elementary and secondary school-age children in the United States that was targeted toward dietary behavior changes. From my search, I got 20 results, but one of them was a duplicate, one was a review article, one only had an abstract, 3 were not related to the curriculum implementation, 3 were irrelevant to the research question, and then 7 were not targeted to U.S. children specifically. After going through the articles that didn't fit my inclusion criteria, I had a total of 4 publications that ranged from the year 2011 to 2018. And these 4 publications were child nutrition-based curriculum that were implemented in the United States. They were implemented in different locations. One of them was implemented in a Head Start, one was implemented in an early care education center, one was implemented in a nonprofit organization, Children's Center, and then another one was implemented in public elementary schools. The age for the children that were included in these 4 different publication studies were preschool age children, ages 3 to 5, which was 3 of the publications, and then one of the publications was elementary school age children, grades K to 4. And then 2 of the publications specifically included a physical education component. The next 4 slides include tables that pretty much summarize the 4 publications that I looked at, which include if they included a theoretical framework or a study design, the intervention groups that they used, the study duration and different activities that they used, what evaluation measures they used, and then the outcomes. So the first study that I looked at was Catch Early Childhood, which used children ages 3 to 5. They did use a theoretical framework. They used the social cognitive theory. They used a pre-post evaluation design and no control group. The participants included parents, teachers from 2 Head Start programs, and then they had different focus groups that they used to look at feasibility and acceptability of the program. They had a 6-week curriculum, which was called It's Fun to Be Healthy, which included 9 lessons, 2 lessons per week. They had a physical activity box to improve physical activity overall. They had parent tip sheets to kind of look at home nutrition that was done outside of school and physical activity. And then they did include a teacher training. They used qualitative data for the feasibility and acceptability, and they used post-intervention parent and teacher focus groups that looked at the lesson plans that they used, and then they also did a quantitative pre to post intervention for changes in fruit and vegetable intake as well as physical activity. Overall, this program had good feasibility and acceptability for classroom curriculum, as well as the activity box that they used and the parent tip sheets. There was a trend toward increases in children fruit, 100% fruit juice and vegetable intake, as well as minutes of physical activity at school between the pre and post intervention. Overall, however, the changes were not significant. A larger sample probably would have been better for this study. Further evaluation for behavioral outcomes would need to be done, and also a prospective design might have been good to use for this study. The second publication was Boss's Healthy Buddies, which assessed the effectiveness of a freely available nutrition education centered curriculum among elementary school age children in the kindergarten through 4th grade. Between subject experimental design was used, however, no theoretical framework was reported. There was about 1,700 student participants in South Carolina. Some public elementary schools were used, and then the intervention school was about 500 students. They had a positive control school, which was about 600, and then they had a negative control, which was about 600. They had 20-minute weekly lessons implemented for a total of 8 weeks. A pre-test was administered 1 week prior to implementation, and then a post-test was administered 1 week following implementation. They looked at daily eating habits, nutrition attitudes regarding beverages, and then nutrition attitudes regarding foods. The negative control school was significantly different, with healthy food knowledge responses that they termed go, slow, or whoa. And then the nutrition education was more effective than no education and is just as good as catch in influencing eating habits and attitudes, they determined. The third publication was done on sustainability via active garden education program, also known as SAGE, which was a pilot test with the goal of increasing physical activity and fruit and vegetable consumption in preschool-aged children. They used a pre-test and a post-test, no control group, a community-based participatory research approach, which had the community involved, an ecological model of physical activity, as well as the REAIM framework. For this pilot test, they had 2 different groups with a total of 90 participants. One of the pilots was done in Texas, and the other one was done in Arizona. They used 12 one-hour sessions, which included songs, games, interactive learning activities, which included garden maintenance and taste tests. They used reach, efficacy, adoption, implementation, and potential for maintenance in parent satisfaction surveys. They used child recognition of hunger and fullness cues to look at. They looked at preschooler physical activity, and they included a parenting practices survey, as well as a fruit and vegetable home availability questionnaire and a child vegetable and fruit consumption 3-day food record. Overall, there was a significant increase in physical activity in both pilot groups, SAGE 1 and SAGE 2. However, there were no changes noted in fruit and vegetable consumption, parenting physical activity practices, or home fruit and vegetable availability. There was a strong potential for maintenance from parent satisfaction, level of communication, and helpfulness. Parents reported increased child knowledge about physical activity and nutrition, and self-knowledge about physical activity as well as nutrition. The fourth publication looked at another pilot test of a program called Garden of Eden, which was an early child education model used for children under 5 years of age. They used mixed methods and cross-sectional design, and they did not use a theoretical framework. They had 45 participants, which included parents, teachers, staff, and children from a children's center in California. They used a one-time survey delivery, grow, harvest, taste fruits and vegetables from garden was a component that they used. They used classroom lessons centered around healthy eating. They used family-style meals using fresh food from the garden and food bank with teachers. And they also used local grocery store trips with parents and nutrition specialists. They included surveys, food records, in-depth interviews, and field observations to look at outcomes. They used a parent satisfaction with school meals survey. They had a parent satisfaction in the past 3 months with effective school on child's dietary habits and development. And they also looked at food practices and program influence on teacher and staff lifestyles in the past 3 months. So in this publication and program, they weren't only looking at the children, they were looking at who was helping with this, who the children are around every day, including teachers or staff at this children's center, and also the parents. Participants overall reported good health, healthy eating practices, and full awareness of importance of healthy eating. Participants reported that the program encouraged them to adopt healthier eating practices. Exercise practices remain unchanged, however, but participants reported the provision of fruits and vegetables supported their ability to eat more healthfully. In looking at the program design for these 4 publications, they all used child-based settings that were either part of a school day or early child education program, They were nutrition-based curriculum providing nutrition education. 2 of the publications included physical activity, while 2 included curriculum effectiveness as a primary outcome. One of them had physical activity as a primary outcome, with another having physical activity as a notable outcome. One of the studies had dietary practices as a primary outcome, and then another had the dietary practices as a notable outcome. Overall implications that nutrition curriculum and physical activity are 2 important components to include in child nutrition programs, in addition to measuring effectiveness and assessing changes in dietary practices. Strengths of program design of these 4 publications was a theoretical framework used in 2 of the studies, one of the studies using modeling behavior, one of the studies using perceived barriers to healthy lifestyles, which was addressed, and then one of the studies used community-based participatory research. Like I said earlier, got the community involved in the program. And then 3 of the studies provided materials in both English and Spanish, which made their programs culturally appropriate for different cultures. Limitations of the publication or the program design, however, is no control group was used, resulting in not attributing to respective intervention, which 2 of the studies did not include a control group. And then one of the studies used a cross-sectional design, so it didn't really look at the program long-term or even short-term, because it was only looked at one period in time. In looking at the program implementation of these 4 publications, some strengths were that 2 of the studies had used 6 to 8 week implementation period with a total of 8 to 9 total lessons, and it's known that 8 to 12 experiences are necessary to accept a nutrition experience. One of the publications did use 12 sessions for their program, and then there was a range in sample sizes from either 45 to over 1,700 participants. Some limitations were that direct observation was used, as well as self-reported data, which isn't always telling. Data was limited due to the majority of participants ranging in 3 to 5 years of age, and also parents and teachers being involved, which could include bias. Also, a majority of the population was Caucasian or white in 2 of the studies, and then 2 of the studies, the majority of the population was either Hispanic or Latino. In looking at the program evaluation of these 4 publications, physical activity was a common component. One of the studies, the minutes of physical activity didn't increase all that much. In another study, only 14% reported that they strongly agreed for improvement on physical activity habits. 3 of the studies had nutrition-based program and curriculum change in healthy eating habits being not significant. One study had good feasibility and acceptability reported overall. Another study had a strong potential for maintenance reported. 2 studies positively influenced parents and teachers. Overall, however, shortened segmented activities ranging from 5 to 7 minutes seemed to be better for information retention. Also, segmented activities over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, or a total of 12 sessions, seemed to be the best. Implementation of nutrition education, physical activity, and tasting seemed to be better, since that would be a multi-dimensional program, not only looking at nutrition, but looking at different things that would be healthy nutrition, physical activity, or dietary behaviors. Also, measuring knowledge and attitudes seemed to be an important and notable thing to include in a program. After looking at these 4 publications, it can be said that school-based interventions help instill healthier dietary behaviors in children. Additionally, they help prevent risk of developing diet-related chronic diseases. Favorable results of child nutrition programs would be a multi-activity program, which would include activities such as nutrition education, food tastings, and physical activity, as well as others. Also, that these activities are implemented in short bouts of time. It is important to continue to study programs and interventions to see healthy and favorable behavior changes made in children in the future. This would include analyzing content and implementation strategies of existing programs. In doing so, it's critical to determine what's effective and how to make improvements for the future. Also, by continuing to study programs, we can see and provide insight on benefits to populations that aren't currently implementing such strategies.
Hello, I'm Madison Christian. I'll be presenting on psychological factors that may predispose young adults to anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorders. To get started, I'm going to review what eating disorders are. They are illnesses that are characterized by severe disturbances in eating behaviors. This could be a severe restriction of food intake, as with anorexia nervosa, purging after eating, as with bulimia nervosa, or consuming a large quantity of food in one sitting, as with binge eating disorder. Individuals with eating disorders have obsessive behaviors with food and weight. I'd like to share a few statistics that I've listed here. At least 30 million individuals in the United States have eating disorders. Anorexia nervosa has the highest mortality rate of all mental illnesses. Binge eating disorder is the most prevalent eating disorder. On the right, you can see a pie chart that shows the percentage of American adults that struggle from eating disorders. When I reviewed existing literature, I found that psychological factors such as low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, and stress are conducive and can perpetuate disordered eating behaviors that are often used as a coping mechanism. You can see that I have listed how this occurs with an individual that has anorexia nervosa. This individual may have a distorted body image, which can lead to a fear of gaining weight. This fear can result in obsessive behaviors with eating and weight, such as the individual severely restricting their food intake to reach a desired body weight, which is often extremely low. Psychiatric disorders often coexist with eating disorders. I have reviewed some of these already, such as depression and anxiety. Others include substance-related disorders and cluster B personality disorders. There is a significant association between eating disorder symptoms and specific psychiatric comorbidity. I was looking to measure the extent psychological factors such as low self-esteem and restrictive or abnormal eating behaviors predispose and contribute to eating disorders in young adults. The measures I used included the Contour Drawing Rating Scale, the Diet History Questionnaire 3, the Eating Attitudes Test 26, and the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale. This is an image of the Contour Drawing Rating Scale. As you can see, there are 9 female and male drawings. Participants were asked to select the drawing they thought best represented their current body image perception. This is an example of a question on the Diet History Questionnaire 3. Participants were asked to complete the Diet History Questionnaire 3 to determine average daily calories consumed in order to determine if calories consumed indicated an underconsumption or overconsumption of food. This is the Eating Attitudes Test 26 or Eat 26. As you can see, there are 3 sections, A, B, and C. Part A is demographic and anthropometric information, which was used to determine BMI. Part B lists questions 1 through 26, which measure level of concern about dieting, body weight, and level of problematic eating behaviors present in participants. Part C is made up of behavioral questions that ask how frequently binging, purging, laxative and diuretic use, and exercise behaviors are practiced. It also asks if the participant had lost 20 pounds in the past 6 months. This is the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale. It was used to measure self-worth by measuring the positive and negative feelings participants had toward themselves. "98 participants completed the contour drawing rating scale. As I mentioned before, this scale was used to determine body image perception participants had. As you may have seen when I showed the contour drawing rating scale, image 5 falls in the middle. "26.5% of participants reported a 7 on the contour drawing rating scale, followed by 20.4% that reported a 6 and 17.3% that reported a 5. The results of the contour drawing rating scale were compared with participants' BMI values. 52.9% fell within a normal BMI range, 38.4% fell within the overweight or obese categories, and 7.7% fell within the underweight category. This chart shows the information I just discussed about BMI categories. As you can see, it shows how many participants fell within each BMI category. This chart shows how many participants reported each number on the contour drawing rating scale. "68 participants completed the Diet History Questionnaire 3. I suspect that less participants completed this based on how time-consuming it can be. It is very in-depth. As I mentioned before, the Diet History Questionnaire 3 was used to collect average daily calories consumed to determine if participants had an underconsumption or overconsumption of food intake. I found that the contour drawing rating scale and energy intake had a significant negative relationship. That is, as participants perceived themselves as having a larger body size, they reported consuming fewer calories. 103 participants completed the Eat 26. I calculated a cumulative score from questions 1 through 26 for each participant. If the score was at or above 20, that indicated a high level of concern for disordered eating behaviors and that referral to a healthcare professional was needed. 17 participants scored at or above 20, which indicated they were at risk. I found as the Eat 26 score increased, Participants tended to respond that media influenced their eating patterns a moderate amount, a lot, or a great deal. This bar chart shows participants' cumulative scores on questions 1 through 26 of the E26. "103 participants completed the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale. Scores below 15 indicated low self-esteem, and scores between 15 and 25 indicated normal self-esteem. 13 participants scored below 15. While only 13 participants scored below 15, many participants reported low self-esteem qualities. 54% reported they wish they could have more respect for themselves, and 44% reported that they feel useless at times. It was noted that the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale and calorie intake had a significant negative relationship. As the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale score increased, indicating normal self-esteem, calorie intake tended to decrease in participants. This bar chart shows participant scores on the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale. In conclusion, this study determined that there are significant psychological factors that can predispose individuals to eating disorders. These factors should be considered when diagnosing and treating individuals that have eating disorders, as they often coexist with eating disorders and can perpetuate disordered eating behaviors. Treatment that addresses these factors is necessary when treating individuals that have eating disorders in order to help them achieve recovery. Lastly, it is well established that a multidisciplinary team approach is a best practice when treating individuals that have eating disorders. These are my references. And thank you for listening.